Hi, Kitchen Kings and Queens. Today, we're going to make chicken in a cream sauce, which is not a very exciting dish, but it is a very versatile dish. You could use it in other applications. You could use it with a variety of grains and starches. So it's a nice, easy, quick, but very satisfying meal. It's more of a winter meal, so it's not really for this weather, but it'll just kind of give you a good idea of what you can make when the weather gets warmer. Before we get started, I want to share with you a couple of things that I got. So, this is, if you remember from uh, my Revereware episode where I showed you my collection, I showed you about this very special line that was called the patio line. There was a little bit of an overlap between the patio line and the institution line. They had a lot of similar qualities. I think what they did to make the patio line was they just took some of the institution lines and they just bundled them together and made that the patio line. But I think in terms of the construction and the material, they're pretty similar. They are noticeably different because they have this tubular handle, and this is a very interesting tubular handle. It's actually like a triangular tubular handle, and it has this little grippy area to give you better grip. They have nice long handles, so you can stay away from the heat, or if you're at the heat and you need a little bit more control, you can use that. They're a very heavy gauge, far heavier than a normal Revereware gauge of stainless steel. And then the bottom has a really nice, pretty significant layer of copper as well. These are very rare. This is the 12 quart. The only saute pan that I need left is the 10 quart. The bigger ones are surprisingly more expensive. You can find the 6 and the 8-inch relatively reasonable. These are very expensive. I was fortunate enough to get this for $250. Ugh, I hate even saying it. But that's a huge deal. And that was shipped. So that's a huge deal for these. These usually go for like $350 and up. And the saucepans and some of the stock pots go for way more than that. Like they're in the $400 to $500 range. I don't have any of those. I do have a stock pot, but no lid, and it's a big stock pot. So I think that was actually from the institution line, which also is rare. The institution and this patio line are very rare. They're very hard to find because they were made for a very short period of time. They did not sell well, which is why they were made for a very short period of time. And they just kind of went off into the the archives of Revereware. So that's one thing I got. This is going to be as you can see, this piece is really causing me some problems here because it's loose and I had to tighten the screw. I had to take off this cage to tighten that screw. And I also had to go through the box and see if the other screw loosened itself and is in the box. If not, I'll have to replace that screw. This is a very, very, very cool piece of kitchen equipment. And you may have seen smaller versions of this, like a stick version from a company called Anova. But this is what's called sous vide. It's actually not called sous vide. The cooking technique is called sous vide. But this is called an immersion circulator. Okay, and what it does is there's a heating coil in here, and there's also a little circulator that circulates that water that is heated. This unit will keep the water at the temperature that you set it at for as long as it's running. And you need that because this cooking technique requires you to cook the foods for a long period of time at a very slow, steady rate. So this is the professional one. I have the it's called professional, but it's really kind of the in between. It is used in commercial kitchens, but this is the heavy duty commercial kitchen version. The person that sold this to me on eBay, they had it listed as for parts not working. And I based on their description, I took a gamble and bought it. It was only $50. This unit is like, oh, I don't know, at least $1,000. They sell used in like the $400 to $800 range, but new, this is like, it's like at least $1,000, but probably more. So this is a really important piece of kitchen equipment in modern kitchens. And we're going to do a whole series on this. Okay, if this one doesn't work, we'll use the my other one. I'll probably use both of them, even if they do work, just because I want to kind of show that comparison. But they're both of the ones I have are made by a company called Polyscience. They are the most professional brand. They're the most heavy duty brand. They actually started out making these circulators for laboratories. And then they started realizing that they could be used in kitchens. And then they started making lines for commercial kitchens. We will talk more about this later. But basically, what this system, sous vide means under pressure in French. And that's what this is done. So you use these bags and you work out the air in the waters and then eventually seal it up so that all the air is out of the bag. Then these stay under the water, and then they keep at the temperature that this circulator provides. So you set the temperature for the doneness of the meat. So you can't necessarily do this for every type of food in one bin. You can for recirculating, and that's another good thing about this. But when you're doing the initial cooking, you have to make sure that everything is at the same rate. So if it's chicken, whatever the temperature that you need to cook the chicken at to keep it um, food safe, you set the temperature for that, and then you let it go through. And then after a certain amount of time, the food is cooked through by induction. Okay, so because it's sitting in that water, the meat reaches the same temperature as the water, and then the food is safely cooked. Now, when we do this, you'll see the food is disgusting looking. The meat is gray, the chicken is white, it's very bland. All those delicious layers of fond and Maillard caramelization, those don't show here. But that's okay, because once it's fully cooked and it's safely cooked, all you have to do is pan fry it or even blowtorch it. That's what most of these chefs that use sous vide oftentimes will just blowtorch the exterior of the meat to make sure you get that caramelization, because you get that nice, quick, intense heat and you don't wind up overcooking the meat. So you get nice tender chicken, you get fork tender steaks, seafood is cooked perfectly. You can infuse it with marinades that way because you're pressurizing the container that the food's in. It will incorporate that marinade more as it cooks. So this is a really good technique. And it's a good technique to make sure you don't overcook meat. It's a very expensive technique, and there are cheaper options. Like I was saying, that Anova, those stick ones, they can be purchased for like $100. So if it's something that you want to explore, I think there's even cheaper ones than that. But that one seems like the most reliable and the most powerful and quality for the best price. Okay, these Polyscience, they are significantly more. But that's because they are made for professional kitchens. Okay, so I'm not going to go on with that. We'll do that when we start exploring this. But I just wanted to show you that before we get into the cooking. So let's go into that now. Okay, Kitchen Kings and Queens, we are at the stove. So we're actually going to make two parts to the sauce. So the first part is I'm going to make a roux. Okay, so I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter. And I'm using that butter that I mentioned before. I don't think I actually showed you the packaging. So let me actually show you that so that if you would like to buy this, you can see what it is. This is the butter that I use. It's called Minerva Dairy. It's an Amish dairy from Ohio. If you have an Amish store, you probably can get this. Some grocery stores sell it. They make this roll butter that's really good. So sometimes they have that, but this is a little bit harder to find. And it's got garlic, parsley, sea salt, and the butter. So it's a very simple, delicate garlic herb butter. I am sorry about Roxy. They're cutting the lawn next door, and she's losing her mind over that, but that's okay. So when you make a roux, okay, what you're doing is you're making a 1-to-1 mixture of flour to fat. And I say fat because for this I'm using butter, okay, but you don't have to use butter. You can use any sort of fat that you want, okay? So my butter is just about melted. So I'm going to add in my flour. Okay, and I just kind of want to, this flour, I really should sift it. I don't know why it's like this, but it's this flour is very lumpy, which is weird. I've never really experienced such lumpy flour. But anyway, so you just want to cook off. Let's see if I can get this a little closer. Okay, you just want to cook off. I'm going to turn down the heat too. The rawness of the flour. Okay, this is our thickening agent, and we already have that seasoning in there. Okay, so I'm going to now add some of our liquid. Okay, so before that, I'm going to add some of the seasonings. So I'm going to add this Maggi seasoning. The one with the red top is better. That's the one that's made in Germany. That one has a slightly better flavor. Mine is the yellow cap, and it's still great. It's still going to do everything Maggi seasoning does. It's not quite as good. I'm going to add a very little bit of this. Actually, I'm going to add it to my bouillon. I'm using this roasted garlic base, and I'm just adding a little bit of it to what little bit of broth that I have. So I have a little bit of broth here, okay, and I'm just going to mix that in there. So that's probably about a half a cup of broth. Okay, so I'm going to add that in there. And then, as you can see, it's already starting to thicken. Okay. And I'm going to also add in some wine. Okay, and I'm going to add in about a cup of wine to this. Okay, now I probably, if I had the more of the broth, I would have used a cup of broth and a half a cup of wine, but it's okay. It's all going to work out. You're just adding your liquid in here. I'm also going to add this in. This is very hard to get. You have to get it from a company that makes, there's this company, I think it's called Soup Base Company, or Soup Base. I'm gonna I'll get it for you. That's where I got this. And this is magic. This is as magic as the Maggi is. Okay. I'm also going to add some green peppercorns, and these are in a brine. Okay. So you don't need the brine. I'm actually going to pour that back in there. That's just to preserve the green peppercorns. But green peppercorns add just such a nice flavor to any sort of sauce. And they're kind of unique. They have a very unique flavor. They're floral. Well, actually the red peppercorns are a lot more floral. But they just have such a nice unique flavor. So I'm adding them in. Okay. And this is probably a good time to taste because we don't want it. Oh my God. That is so good. All right, we're going to turn up the heat because it does have a bit of a strong wine flavor. And you don't want a strong wine flavor. You want the wine to kind of mellow out and just give the sweetness and just a little bit of a flavor. Okay. So we're just going to let that bubble away. And then clean up a little bit. Because you want to, like I said, get rid of that rawness. It's also going to thicken up the sauce a little bit. So the cool thing about sauce making, it's almost like potion making, it seems like. Because you thicken and then you reduce and then you thin and then you thicken again and then you reduce. So sometimes I feel like a witch at a cauldron, which is really in my wheelhouse. So I enjoy that. I'm going to turn this down. These burners are very, let me show you the burner. The flame is really needs to be on the bottom of the pan. You don't want it over the sides because then it just burns things, okay? So I think we're good there. So we're going to turn this off now. And we're going to put in just a splash of cream, okay? And again, this is just to give the sauce a little bit more richness. And believe it or not, in a thick, delicious gravy like this is actually going to lighten up the sauce because the gravy is very, very rich. Okay, that's great. So I'm actually going to take out some of this sauce. Okay, I'm going to put it in a little container here. Excuse me. Still struggling with this darn cough. And now we're going to just throw in the chicken. Okay. So it's just a bag of picked rotisserie chicken that I had. And then you're just going to toss it in there. And that's just going to give you just a bunch of really lovely meals. Okay, this can be used just about any way you can imagine. It can be put in pastry cups. That would be a great way to serve this. A very, very rich way. If you're going to do that, though, serve it just with like a vegetable and a nice light green salad. Just like a vinaigrette light green salad. Okay, because that will be a very rich meal. Okay. Other options, you could put it over some sort of a starch. So rice or noodles, or I'm going to do it with mashed potatoes because I have some mashed potatoes. Some nice roasted potatoes would go really well with this. You do want to balance it though with some vegetables. Okay, so have a nice light vegetable, maybe some carrots would go really good as a side for this, or some green vegetable. You also want to make sure that you are having a salad with it. A salad would be a really nice way to lighten this meal up. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so that took absolutely no time at all. You can use this sauce also for a roasted chicken. So you don't have to pick it. You could just get a rotisserie chicken and add this gravy to the rotisserie chicken. So this is not just for this. You can use this sauce for anything. You could use, and this sauce is very versatile. You can use it for beef. It would go really well with beef, or turkey, or pork. It would go really well with. It would go really well with just about anything. It's a very nice light sauce. Okay, so I hope that this little kitchen quickie gave you an idea of how to make a nice sauce. I would say this is a peppercorn gravy sauce, but that's just it's just basically a sauce. So you can kind of take it in whatever direction you want. If you want to add some color, which I do, we have the green peppercorns, but I'm just going to add in some chives. Would be really nice. I wish I had some shallots left over. I do not. Otherwise, I would have put shallots in there. That would have been really good. Another addition that I'm going to do is some cracked black pepper. Actually, this is not black pepper. It's black, white, and green peppercorn. Oftentimes, I like to put in red peppercorn too because they are delicious, and they are the ones that are a little bit more floral. So for those ones, I would add those in as well because it's just such a nice mixture to mix all of those peppercorns. They all kind of add something a little bit different. Okay. And you could add your favorite things, okay, if you want it. Again, I said this before with sauces. You want to make it more herbaceous, put some basil and some fresh parsley and some tarragon would go really good. What else would be good? Rosemary, if you like that. You know my feelings on rosemary. But anyway, have a great day, Kitchen Kings and Queens. Try this recipe. But wait for the warmer months. I'm just doing it because I'm trying to use up some some chicken, but this is definitely a lovely warm or cool weather meal. All right, bye for now, Kitchen Kings and Queens.